So Jen with one N asked, do recovering Scientologists have some place to seek help? Like, are they included in the Recovering from Religion Foundation, or is there a specific foundation for them?
Yes, it's called the Aftermath Foundation. And you can look that up. There's a website. It operates out of Florida. I am friends with the board members. It is something that is there for anyone to reach out to. I think it's aftermath.com, aftermathfoundation.com. Actually, I'll just check that right now while I'm talking.
.org. So I've .org, and it might be the wrong one. So
yeah, looking it up. No, that's not it. That is not Aftermath Surviving Psychopathy Foundation. Let me see here.
Yeah.
Aftermath Foundation. I'll just look it up this way. See if I can. Yeah, there it is. It's theaftermathfoundation.org. My bad.
Yep.
So that is the website, theaftermathfoundation.org, and anyone coming out of Scientology at any level can contact them and be directed to some assistance.
Cool. I just linked that one in the chat for everybody.
Right.
Yeah, I was just about to do. Ben with one N also asks, is it true that the higher ups will take your passports so you can't leave the country?
That is not it's not a higher ups, actually. It's a lower downs. It's pretty common practice at the lower levels of the C organization, not public Scientologists or staff members. But when you get to that high level, then you're fully committed and every aspect of your life is controlled. So yeah, of course they're going to take your passports because they don't want you going anywhere. When you go to the Free Winds, which is the name of their cruise ship down in the Caribbean islands, they sail around on the ABC Islands. They also confiscate the crew passports there, and I'm not sure if they take the passengers. I think because I've never heard of any passenger having a problem down there, but the crew definitely, they've held people hostage on that ship. That's for sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mark Caesar asks, Chris, what is the point of living multiple lives if you can't remember them? Might as well be dead and not have another life.
That's the reason why you need to do Scientology. Because Scientology will free you from the amnesia of the experience of life after life after life. That's the point. Come on, man.
Yeah.
Gotta think about this, man. That's what it's all about.
Obviously,
Mark.
He's not clear.
The reality is that is the reality. That is what we're all doing. We're all living life after life after life, and we can't remember shit from one to the next because you get amnesia after you die. So
makes sense.
Scientology busts that open, and so you don't have to keep forgetting because you conquer the mechanisms that make you forget, amongst many other things that you conquer by doing Scientology.
Of course. Makes sense. Absolutely.
I have a question now, actually, if I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
Chris, did you ever meet David Miscavige?
Yes, I was in the same room as him 3 times.
What because I've obviously heard everything that's said in all the docos and everything publicly like that, and I've seen the interview he did. I can't remember who interviewed him, but back in the 90s, I think
Ted
it was.
Koppel on Nightline?
I think that was, yeah, because I'm pretty sure I only did one.
Yep, he's only done one on video that we know of. He has done other interviews, but I think that was the only, maybe one other video one, but that's the most famous one for sure.
Well, that's the one I'd heard of. What is your personal experience with him?
Well, when I was in the same room with him, the various times that I was at the receiving end of briefings or questions from him. So I was in a state of absolute terror of the man, but I didn't know to use that word. It's only in hindsight that I can actually describe it that way. At the time, I thought I was nervous, fearful, but respectful. I thought that this is what respect felt like.
Yeah.
I've since learned, no, it's very different feeling. So, because I couldn't interpret how I was feeling in a negative way, that would have been, sacrilegious in a way. So I had to interpret it in using words that made sense. So I respect, But he was intense. He's a very, very intense guy. He's very stage mannered, very stage. He's got a lot of stage presence and personal charisma. Kind of magnetic in a way. It's very intense stare. He does that on purpose. It's not an accident. And that's what he was like.
I was thinking with the eyes, it's a very dominating presence. That's a direct way of getting to people. Especially being he's not exactly the most how do I put it? Of small stature.
Yeah, he's tiny, man. He comes up to about here.
I was actually going to ask you to do that. I didn't want to ask.
Yeah, no, he's small. But here's the other thing: he's always got an entourage with him. He's always got backup.
Yeah.
A lot of it. I mean, the security guys. We had security guys. He's got bodyguards. This kind of thing. He has no reason to be afraid of you, no matter how big you are. So he lets it all out at you, knowing that you're not going to be able to do a thing about it. And that kind of power is pretty freaky. If he were to, if I were to see him now, I would not have that same reaction. None of the baggage that I had carried around with me at that time is still with me. I'd probably pop him in the face, so that's my take on him now.
Any of that, being the figure who he is, and when you're in, is that something that adds to the stage presence, so to speak, like that ability to own the room? Because if he walked into another room of people nothing to do with Scientology and he didn't have his big entourage, he would just be another short guy walking into a room.
Exactly, which is why he won't do that. That's why he hides. That's why he won't come out and talk to any reporters or make himself known or come out and face any music. He'll never do that because he doesn't control the situation or the environment. And he only travels and comes out in situations where he is the master of the environment. And so that's why, he's never gonna come out and answer any questions, go into any depositions, show up in court. I mean, none of that stuff. He'll never will.
So, it's a very, very hypothetical. Let's say he was, for whatever reason, I don't know what the right word is at the moment, but is it indicted? Asked to be brought through court, found guilty, charged with something. Would they,
sure.
He wouldn't have any, he wouldn't be the sort to do a crazy recourse. I'm thinking the sort of insane things that other cultish people in places can, what's that group, Waco and that, when that sort of thing threw up, would that be something likely or nothing?
I don't see him doing that.
No.
I don't see him doing that. I think he would have a heads up on anything that would be coming his way. And I think because Scientology has inroads with the police and with federal agencies and stuff, they just know
it's coming. Yeah.
And they buy influence and they get it. And he would know it. I think unless it was completely out of nowhere, he'd have some idea it was coming. And I think he's the kind of person who would run. That's what I think he would do. I don't think he's the kind of person who would be able to
justify it. He'd be able to justify it with that the Sea Org originally, as we were talking about, how they did a bit of a runner in the international waters, so he could fall back on that being a precedent.
Oh yeah, if he needed to, without any question whatsoever, he could land on the free winds down in the Caribbean, and that boat, which is basically a very large yacht. I mean, it's a cruise ship, but it's a really tiny one. They'd sail wherever. They'd go out on the ocean blue. They would go out, and you'd never hear from them again, kind of thing. I mean, you would. They'd track him down, but I'm just saying he would try something like that, I think, before he would try to take a stand in a courtroom.
Yeah. Far out.
I think. That's my conjecture.
Of course. Yeah, no, of course. You can only really speculate on stuff like this.
Right.
Nadine, sorry, any other questions? We might, like...
Yeah, there's still 7-8 more questions and a few comments. I'd like to get to the comments
probably
first.
Stop asking them to bring in the questions, though, because otherwise we'll never end the show.
That is true. That will happen, yeah.
There's a few noteworthy comments that I've come across, so
Go for it.
bring your attention to them. Southern Boss Lady says, "Yay, Chris Shelton and Rachel Bernstein helped me to see the JWs are a cult. Even though they did not mention the JWs, they list the things to look out for, and then I put the pieces together."
Oh, that sounds so... That's
awesome.
That's awesome.
That's great.
So
great.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. And Apostate Babe, Linda James, says, "Please let Chris know that when I wanted to learn how to think critically, I Googled critical thinking and I found him, and he helped me immensely. And so I found Rachel Bernstein. Thank you."
Awesome. You're very welcome.
And then Jen with one N. Absolutely. I quite enjoy your work, and it's everything I've watched is great. Jen with one N says, "I went off on the Dianetics pop-up booth this past Black Friday at the mall selling their personality tests."
Good.
So I'm
Take it to the man. Take it to him, man.
That's the spirit.
And just so we're totally clear, I am joking. I don't want anybody going around punching a Scientologist. Okay, please don't do that.
Oh no,
you got to say these things out loud, or people infer stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So, next question is Clade, Starfish. Hubbard was okay, my pronunciation's bad deal. Hubbard was obviously a sci-fi writer. How does Scientologists reconcile that it was clearly all science fiction, or do they ever address it?
No, they don't address that. Hubbard was a writer across a number of fields, not just science fiction. He wrote mystery, romance, westerns, adventure, nonfiction, fiction. The guy is one of the most prolific authors ever. I mean, you can say that for him. He wrote, and he wrote a lot.
That is one thing he did do. He's got a lot
and
of books.
I think he's also one of the most translated authors in the world, if not the most translated.
I have heard that. Not sure if it's true, but yeah.
No, it's true. No, it's true.
Okay.
I think there were 1 or 2 Guinness records awarded on that.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So it's legit. But I mean, what he wrote was crap. Okay. So let's be clear about that. Okay. He just happened to write a lot of it.
Wait, he didn't get his Guinness record for quality.
There's no. And even when I was a Scientologist, I couldn't read his fiction. I hated it. It was so bad. So he wrote a lot of stuff. So as far as Scientologists go, though, there's no dot connecting between, well, gee, he was a fiction writer and now he's writing this stuff, because Hubbard comes from a time, and this is really kind of important to remember, and a lot of people don't get this, is Hubbard comes from a time where a lot of science fiction, a lot of stuff and a lot of authors came out of science. I mean, Robert Heinlein was an engineer of some kind. Arthur C. Clarke. A lot of these guys had professional degrees or science degrees and wrote. And so Hubbard didn't have those kind of degrees or credentials to fall back on, but he knew all those guys. They were all of the same class, so to speak. So it wasn't that weird that somebody with a writing background would enter into a philosophy or a science. And that's how Hubbard did his thing. So if you want to know how Scientologists reconcile that, I just told you.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
And Beach Price asks, so where do members think Hubbard is now, or is it taboo to wonder?
No. Nobody knows specifically because he's off to do further research. Hubbard didn't, the specifics of his death, how he died, where he died, what happened, all of that is buried. No Scientologist knows that stuff. As far as they're concerned, there was an event that took place in the Palladium Theater in Hollywood about 3 or 4 days after he died. And David Miscavige and other people went on stage and said that he voluntarily, causatively left his body. Didn't have a stroke, didn't have a heart attack, didn't have anything bad happen to him. He causatively left his body to go and do further research on higher spiritual states of awareness. So Scientologists have this vague idea that at some point in the future he might return, but they're also told falsely that he left all these upper level materials for them to do, which haven't even been released yet. And they're working to try to get Miscavige to release those levels, which, by the way, don't exist even, but they think they do, so that they can achieve these high spiritual states, just like L. Ron Hubbard did before he voluntarily left his body and took off. So.
And that, am I right in remembering that he said something about he's finished his current research in this realm or something like that? Like he'd decide, like he'd come to this conclusion, and now that's why he's going off to do the further research. And of course, it was of his own accord. Like he couldn't be taken down by any mortal means.
No, that would be the only thing that no Scientologist could be allowed to believe, is that he died of causes that were outside of his control, because that would speak the lie to everything Scientology is about.
Yeah.
So they kind of have a vested interest in believing that.
Okay. Bad Temper Badger asks, Chris, when they do the "What are your crimes" thing, do they always stick to the script as closely as in the videos I've seen? Almost word for word every time?
They used to. They don't do that a whole lot anymore. Scientologists are like the ones who are trusted to do that. Because let me be clear, not all Scientologists do that. Not all Scientologists even know to do that or are trained to do that. So what you see in those videos are a minority of Scientologists who have been entrusted by the Office of Special Affairs, which is Sea Org members who work in the Intelligence Bureau of Scientology. Yes, it's Intelligence Bureau, as in, covert operations. Yeah, it's really like that. So you have these Sea Org members who work in that office, and they train people and how to deal with critics by confronting them in the street and telling them what's your crimes, and there is a drill to it, and there is words and that kind of thing. So you see that, but they don't really get out and do that much anymore because they've been exposed for what they do, and it looks ridiculous and it sounds ridiculous because it is ridiculous, because it is, and they know it. They know that it doesn't reflect well on them. I should say that they believe in what they're doing, but they know it doesn't look good. So when it was not done on camera and when it wasn't all over the internet, it was a good thing to do. But now that it's exposed, we look crazy, so we can't be doing that anymore. So that's why you won't run into that too much. If you have your, phone out and you're filming as they're doing it, you'll see that they will stop doing it and they'll just walk away from it.